Okay, so thank you all for joining us today. We're going to give it a few seconds here while some folks still go ahead and sign on to our webinar link. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started as folks are still joining. Just so that you know, this is being recorded. So hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Sarah Ozark, Manager of Client Solutions here at JPL, and your host for today. So over the next hour, we're going to be digging into something that matters more and more every day, how to earn brand visibility in AI search. And as we all know, AI is everywhere and it's evolving really fast. And then if you're not sure how to keep up, it can even feel a little bit overwhelming. But here's what we know. AI search is fundamentally changing how people find and choose brands. And those people, they're the ones that you're all trying to reach. So if you're here for an honest look at where AI search stands today, no fluff, just actionable insights that you can actually use in your 2026 planning, y'all are in the right place. So let me introduce JPL quickly, especially for those who might be joining us and that we haven't had the opportunity to meet yet. Simply put, we are a marketing agency that helps brands earn trust and show up as their expert for where your audience searches. So when you partner with us, we become an extension of your team, bringing your paid, organic, and owned content together with AI optimized search strategies so that your brand shows up with authority and relevance. So as we move on, I'd love to introduce you to our speakers for today. So first up, Torin. So Torin is our manager of search. So he leads our search experience strategy, helping brands show up in the moments that matter. He's an expert in SEO, SEM, CRO, and content strategy with the sharp focus on how AI is reshaping search. His approach centers on visibility, performance, and audience intent across traditional and AI-powered platforms. Next up, we have Cody. So Cody connects paid media strategy directly to business outcomes as our senior manager of paid media. He's certified across Google Ads, Meta, and GI4, and is our in-house expert in driving discoverability in even zero-click environments. Cody builds a full funnel strategy that helps keeps brands competitive and visible across today's fragmented search landscaping. So a couple of housekeeping items. We've saved time at the end for Q&A. So please drop your questions in the chat as you go, as they kind of come to your mind, and we'll answer and tackle as many as we can live. And one final note, it is being recorded and you will receive a link to the full webinar afterwards so that you can rewatch it for any key points that caught your mind or share with your team. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. As we dive into the content, we actually have two quick polls to get a sense of where everyone is so that we can tailor our conversation for today. So our first question, what digital tactics are your top priority heading into 2026? From SEO, paid search, website content, social, maybe it's PR or influencer, or maybe you might still be planning. Go ahead, that window should have popped up on your screen and pick all that apply. And so as you start to answer those, we'll go ahead in the next few seconds or so, start to look at what those results may be. Perfect. Okay, awesome. So it looks like we've got a really big mix of answers. We've got a lot of people interested in SEO, and we've got a lot of people interested in that website content too as well. Based off of what we're seeing here, Torin, what are your thoughts on these responses?
Yeah, well, so surprisingly, these all play a role in what we're going to be
Yeah,
talking about today. So I'm excited to see
excellent.
we're all kind of a clear spread across all of them, which leads me into our next poll question. So I do want to also ask, just to kind of level set with the audience, what is your biggest motivation today for attending AI Search, this conversation? What is your biggest motivator? Are you looking to maybe get a leg up with competition and ranking in AI Search? Do you just want to make your content work harder, increase those citations? Are you still kind of figuring out what tactics to prioritize and you're hoping this will give some inspiration? Is measurement kind of your main focus, or is it paid and you're trying to make the most out of your investment?
I don't know, Torin. I think I'm interested in the how to increase citations.
We'll talk more about that too. But yeah, it looks like the clear winner here is how to rank an AI search. So well, let's dig into it. And we'll start by talking a little bit here about what we're going to get into. So first, as we start talking about how to optimize for LLM visibility, we first want to cover off on some fundamentals. We'll then talk about building authority, how you can build your brand authority within LLMs. We'll then transition into how to optimize your specific content to appear in AI search, how to measure. And then we'll wrap it up, bringing it back to Cody towards the end of our presentation, who will talk about how to elevate your paid search performance in the zero-click world. All right. Well, it's no surprise. I think we're all here today. Number one, because we've seen what's been happening. AI has rolled out largely, specifically in Google back in, I want to say, Cody, what was that? May or so, mid 2024.
Yeah.
And immediately saw impacts. I know on this SEO side, we had declining clicks anywhere from 10 to 40%, depending on the vertical and depending on the intent. But Cody, what were you kind of seeing on the paid side there? I'm curious around your thoughts.
Yeah, so starting in May of 2024 last year, we really started to see our paid search performance for, some of our more niche advertisers really dip from a performance perspective. So CTRs, as you mentioned on the organic side, they dipped on the paid side upwards about 20%. And for those advertisers who were very low funnel in terms of, conversions being their objective, we saw conversions, cost per conversions increase upwards of 60% with the initial rollout of AIO. So yeah, a lot of tough conversations were had with some of our clients when that happened. But fortunately, in the last, I'd say 6 to 8 months this year, performance has certainly rebounded in that capacity.
Yeah, I echo that. On the search side for the first, I want to say 6 to 8 months, we were seeing the same thing, just kind of continuous declination in clicks. Thankfully, in the past couple months, especially with the efforts as we were learning what's working, what's not working, we've really seen that kind of plateau and have kind of rebounded as well. But it's no surprise, with about half of keywords now triggering AI overviews and with the low click-through rates causing this zero-click world, it's no wonder advertisers are kind of asking now, what's going on? And specifically in my world, they're asking, is SEO dead? Should we be investing in SEO? Should we be doing content? Like it's not driving the visibility and the clicks and what we were previously measuring on. But I want to level set and just remind everyone that no, it is absolutely not dead. And we're going to talk all about how SEO plays a critical role in driving AI visibility in today's AI search driven world. So first, covering off, AI search drives discoverability. It's not a matter of, are people still searching and where are they searching? It's a matter of how they're searching. Your audience isn't just using Google anymore. They're asking AI as well. And they're not just, querying and having conversations with it. They're starting their journey here, asking for advice, looking for recommendations that they can trust. And once they're kind of garnering this initial intake of what their options are, what's out there, we're also seeing that transition to Google. And Google is still the behemoth in this space. ChatGPT is the clear leader as well. Again, just kind of looking here at some of the dominance in market share. But also to note, it's not taking away from anything in Google. It's actually adding more search real estate. So when we talk about searches and how many is actually happening every single day, 16.4 billion searches in Google, and surprisingly in ChatGPT, over 3.5 billion searches every day. But those searches look different. When we're talking about how people are querying within Google, they're much more short tail. They're much more specific and broad, averaging around 1 to 4 words, versus in ChatGPT, these are much more personal conversations, typically a lot more long tail. And again, depending on how you're using it, if you're using it for generative purposes or you're actually just using it as a search engine to query for options, typically we're seeing averages of 5 words or longer. And what's most interesting as well, of those 3.5 billion ChatGPT prompts, at least one of those prompts is triggering one query to search indexes. So one thing to note with ChatGPT or Perplexity, these different platforms you're using, they all have their own search index APIs that they're going out and querying for search results to give you the answers you're looking for. So these vary by platform. And you're looking at the example that we have here, I want to call out Using the example for a higher ed purpose, affordable and highly rated PA colleges that offer accelerated bachelor programs in data analytics and allow transfer of high school AP math credits. Very specific, very personal. And you can see on the right there, we have highlighted some of the searches that are being conducted. This is only two, but also the sources that they're finding to bring you the information that you're looking for once it kind of puts it all together and formulates a good answer for you. Now, I want to call out one specific thing in here that we're going to come back to later in the presentation. If you see the second search box there, that edurank.org, keep that in the back of your mind. It's going to come in place earlier or in later. So using this example, again, very personal, very long kind of query. Over 7 search index retrievals were conducted during this kind of initial search, and over 26 fan-out queries were happening within Google. So again, kind of shows the very broad sense that not only are people searching in ChatGPT, but ChatGPT is then taking your searches and conducting search in Google and Bing as well. So before we get into how to optimize to get your citations and get your mentions within AI visibility, we first need to talk about the fundamentals of what actually these acronyms that everyone's throwing around mean, what the objectives are, and what you're going to get out of them. So when we're talking about SEO, I think we're all very familiar with what SEO stands for, but when we're talking about SEO, we're talking about findability within search. AEO and GEO, or answer engine optimization, generative engine optimization, you're looking for opportunity to appear within answers and discoverability. AIO, I think, is pretty synonymous when we're talking about the general opportunity here around AI optimization. But specifically to me, I look at this as more of opportunity to optimize for agentic action, which is really where we're seeing a lot of the future of search heading. And when we talk about the outcomes, there's 2 main outcomes that you achieve when achieving AI visibility. You're either getting cited or you're getting mentioned. If you're being cited, you're getting a link back to your content. And this is really where, as I just showed, leaning into search results and having accessible ranking content that search engines can find and source for your information when you're looking for it in these AI platforms. Same thing goes for Google AI overviews. When you're talking about being mentioned, here's where we're not seeing necessarily those URLs that are linking back to specific content, but it's more in pertinence to the training data that's surrounding your brand and having those reputational and trust signal factors that poise your brand as a source that can be trusted to recommend without having to source that information, kind of like a popularity contest. And when we talk about those citations, it's also varying by platform. So just because you rank in, Google AI overviews or AI mode or even ChatGPT does not mean you're going to necessarily appear the exact same way or the exact same position across these other AI platforms. So again, just kind of looking at some of these citations that are highly noted across the big ones, Google, ChatGPT, and Perplexity. You can kind of see this through line of Reddit being commonly cited. And I want you to kind of think about why that is. Think about what kind of content is on those platforms. It's specific use cases of people sharing their firsthand experiences. And that's really where AI is kind of leaning to try to find those experts, those individual experiences that, based on your query and your personal preference of what you're looking for, can be cited and linked as opportunity for you to deep dive into from others' firsthand experiences. Also, looking at this, you can see YouTube. So as we get into talk more about this, you also see the diversity of types of content that are surfaced within these platforms. It's not just your website content, it's not just written content, but it's also visual content and video specifically. So one thing to note about content that LLMs cite and source, they really like to target the informational type of query intent. So when you're looking for a how-to or you're looking for information about something, really strong to be able to answer that with confidence. But where it doesn't really show up strongly is in showing the how. So it's really great on the what and the why, but not so much on the showing you how to do something visually. And this is where we're seeing a lot more instances of these visual platforms, like again, YouTube and even TikTok, where it's linking to videos and content that can show you more of that information, since ChatGPT can't really interact with you and show you visually itself. And last one to call out here is just Wikipedia. So ChatGPT specifically is notorious for linking to Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a nuanced, source, given that it is also somewhat of an aggregate across the web. And ultimately, it's really trusted because it likes to prevent bias, prevent, you or I from going in and trying to optimize your own presence within Wikipedia. And that's why I think ChatGPT is also referencing this very heavily. Now, again, it's nuanced. You can't necessarily directly control what's in there, but we are seeing that as a heavily sourced citation within ChatGPT. Now, the biggest thing I want to call out here is towards the bottom. 95% of ChatGPT cited sources are under 10 to 12 months old. So key here is recency and frequency of having your content updated. The goal that we're all trying to strive for is becoming the authoritative source that not only users trust, but AI is citing. Now, let's look at an example of what that looks like. So, just searching again in more of a CPG space, we'll use this example of, should I use aluminum foil or parchment paper for cookies? I know I've searched that in the past. I wasn't sure of the difference. And you can start to see exactly what I just showed. Now, mind you, this is Google AI overviews. We can see the first result there that it's being cited, Reddit. It's a forum, it's showing that it's not only just looking for specific how-tos or answers, but it's also asking what personal experiences others have had around cooking with aluminum versus parchment paper. Below that, we see a short form social video. So again, kind of showing the difference of the outcomes between those two. Again, visual cues. We have a blog from All Recipes. And then the last one here, we have authority brands that are appearing in here who sell these products, who can talk about the value of their products and using them and the outcomes that are associated with this. And this is where we want to be. We want to make sure our authoritative brands are appearing within AI overviews and these other areas of AI search. But how do you achieve that authority to actually appear in AI search? Well, it's important to also understand that generative AI cannot form inherent bias or opinion. Subjectivity is heavily influenced by reputational factors, again, garnering it across the web. And those reputational factors are known, what we call in the SEO space, and if you haven't heard of it before, EEAT. So without digging too deep into each of these nuances here, experience, expertise, authoritative, and trustworthiness are all critical elements to interweave throughout your content, regardless of where that content lives. So we're going to talk a lot about diversifying your content, expanding your content presence, and especially if you're having this content on your website, of course, making sure that these elements are front and center, but really having this through line of EEAT as the baseline for your content creation is key. So what does that look like when we're talking about these different, verticals and where you might be looking at to try to create content and own that authority? You want to make sure that you're, again, interweaving this EEAT, but specific to the platforms that are preferred by your audience and also AI. So if you're in the B2C space or CPG, for example, again, as I just kind of walked through in the visual example for Google AI overviews, you want to make sure that you're diversifying your content outside of just that how-to, the information type of content, but also hitting on the inspirational visual factors that are expanding your reach outside of just traditional search. So again, noting here, not all tactics are going to be applicable to each of these platforms, but you might want to consider, expanding your reach within native platforms like YouTube, Pinterest, and TikTok to garner that initial visibility, demonstrate product or service use within each of those areas, and expand your conversations into where they're actually being held with those experts themselves within forums. Healthcare and finance spaces is a little bit more nuanced. So as we talk about EEAT, that stems from a couple years ago, dating myself, when a lot of conversation was around YM, YL content, your money, your life. Anything that pertained to impacting your money or your life was heavily kind of guarded and had a lot of scrutiny around how Google AI overviews was going to answer those, because if they didn't answer it accurately, it could directly affect your well-being. So a lot of the space here is pertinent around owning the conversation and putting your subject matter experts at the forefront. So yes, your own web definitely plays a key here, but also linking to those very authoritative and trustworthy citations. So whether that's government resources, higher education resources, .gov and .edu typically hold a lot of authority for having good practice, having good information, being trusted. So those are good resources to look to when you're outsourcing linking content. But really the opportunity here is bringing your subject matter experts, your internal doctors, your subject matter experts, your nutritionists, whatever that might be, bringing them to the forefront of your content and showing their credentials so that users and AI both know who is behind that content. In the B2B and higher ed space, again, this is where it gets even more nuanced compared to B2C and healthcare. Those are very highly searched for in the public domain of search. So going to Google, a lot of searches happen there for, CPG and general B2C intent. B2B is a little bit more nuanced. And here's where we're seeing a lot more presence in Wikipedia as a pertinent strategy to make sure that it's up to date, robust about what your business offers, what solutions are and what the outcomes are, how long you've been in business. Again, building those trust factors of how long you've been doing what you're doing and who is behind the work itself. But we're also looking at, local availability. So it's not necessarily, even if you're in a national scale, having those local directories that list your business are also critical because they're referenced within AI as well. And you're starting to see, again, even across healthcare, finance, and B2B, LinkedIn Pulse has actually been something that's been pretty frequently cited within ChatGPT and other AI platforms like Google AI Overviews. Because again, as we talked about with Reddit, it's surfacing the expertise, the subject matter expert directly to the forefront. So finding ways to interweave both your expertise through individual stakeholders, but also then reposting as a business can help elevate your expertise across the ecosystem. Now, if you remember in that first example I talked about in ChatGPT for higher ed, again, looking here, Wikipedia, the forums, directories, all very important, but niche.com, usnews.com, edurank.org, these are all aggregate rating sites that have some proprietary, surveys and ways of calculating higher ed rank. And we actually see these directly within search results. And again, as I mentioned in that first example I showed, that was a direct source that was pulled from ChatGPT as well. So while you can't directly necessarily impact these or influence them since they are conducted more institutionally from niche.com, US News, and EduRank independently, you can also look for those cues around where maybe institutionally you want to amp up your ability to improve those metrics that it's reporting on, or create supplemental content that can combat any of the negative sentiment that's created in those reports. So just some thought starters around your individual vertical of where to build that authority and how to kind of diversify your platform. But that also begs the question, where do brands start, right? There's a lot that you can do here. We're talking a lot about content and how to optimize, but where should you start? So I think you're starting to see the through line, even with how ChatGPT is outsourcing to, Google, Bing, Brave. SEO is really the foundation that you want to focus on here. So SEO, you're trying to be found. You want to make sure you're ranking. Whereas AEO and GEO, here's where we're getting into more of that content opportunity and the reputational factors. So when we're talking about these, it's important to also know the factors that go into that. SEO, of course, is very owned media focused. AEO and GEO start to blur the lines between owned media and some earned and even paid media augmentation. But tactically, SEO is really focusing on those owned materials. So things like technical SEO, your content strategy, how you're interlinking your ecosystem, how well your site's performing, local SEO that I mentioned. Whereas AEO, depending on which side of the coin you're looking at, so if you're looking more on the SEO side or the GEO side, here's where you're starting to see more of that diversification of content, addressing the direct needs of your audience. So not, again, just creating website content, but diversifying across platforms where they're engaging most, and also optimizing the reach within those native platforms. You're also looking at other owned factors, or I should say earned factors like positive ratings and reviews, forum and community management that we mentioned about participating in, having discussions around, and also creating thought leadership studies and research that poises you as an expert and often earns those citations naturally without having to earn backlinks through any other paid methods. GEO, on the other hand, again, is much more notorious on the things that SEO can't directly impact, but it can influence or inform. So again, we talked about Wikipedia, but here's where we also see other earned and paid tactics come to life, like public relations, reputation management, influencer marketing, and earning those publication lists, awards, and recognition. Now, I want to also call out each of these in their own right have a role to play as we're talking about winning AI visibility. But when we talk about measurement, and we'll circle back to more of this towards the end when we talk about how to measure LLM visibility, each of these should be measured in their own right. So again, AI visibility is more of a vanity metric. Just because you appear with an AI does not mean you're automatically impacting your business goals, your business outcomes. So SEO, you're looking at those traditional ranking factors, keyword rankings, organic clicks, organic conversions. Whereas AEO, you're starting to look again more at those specific outcomes, your AI citations, your share of search, your referral traffic coming from these platforms, and also those conversions coming from those platforms. And then GEO is again more of the qualitative analysis around those AI mentions, the social sentiment, and your net promoter score. And really, this all boils down into four main content pillars when we're talking about optimizing for AI visibility. So first, again, keep this through line in mind as we keep talking about how to optimize. Technical SEO is really the foundation to start your journey, making sure your content is user-centered and also agent-ready. And again, you'll start to see the through lines here where SEO plays a role versus where AEO and GEO start to come into play. Now, I often like to say AIO, since that is optimizing for agentic search, that does fall in line with a lot of the technical SEO foundation. So that's the only area we're really calling it out here. But again, a lot of these are more so fluid and it's informing throughout the entire experience. Number two, content structure and credibility. So optimizing your content not only for your end users' readability and experience, but for how AI is understanding the connected tissue between all of your different topics and all of your different content on your website. Not just your content, but your entities, your different areas that you're talking about through your website, your subject matter experts, your businesses, your products, your solutions, whatever that might be. Number three is your topical coverage and your diversification. So when we're talking about building that cross-platform presence and joining conversations, it's more than just building content on your website. It's experiencing that throughout all of the different ecosystems that your audience is engaging. And then lastly here, your trust signals for reputation and building online mentions. Again, those are the things we just talked about through GEO, where really you're kind of looking into PR, influencer marketing, paid media to amplify your messaging and reinforce positioning. That helps to kind of solidify and sometimes get you even quicker wins as SEO can ramp up over the longer term. So let's dig a little bit deeper into what each of these mean. When we're talking about technical SEO foundations, I think one of the key instances here that I'm often educating clients around is we're not just focusing on your crawlability and indexability, as we talked about making sure you're appearing within search results, but making sure your content is also rendered and accessible to AI agents as well. That's not always the case, and they can be mutually exclusive. Just because you are found within search index does not mean that it's necessarily fully understanding your content. So this is again where making sure it's rendered through proper JavaScript and CSS is key. And then also schema markup. So you heard me mention entities there. Schema markup is essentially just structured data that's mapping all of those entities as well as different aspects of your website for a fully robust, well-mapped map of your website, as well as the entities who are informing all of that content. And not only does this have benefit for AI search, but it's also helping to augment your visual appearance within search results as well. So these next two here, content structure and credibility, as well as the topical coverage we talked about, really go hand in hand with the AEO piece. So not only are you optimizing your on-site content for direct answers and answering specific intent, making sure you're showcasing the author credibility and those EEAT factors we talked about, optimizing headers and using tables, charts, and numbered lists to make sure things are quickly scannable and easily understood. But you're focusing all of this content around what we're calling CEPs or category entry points, or more broadly, just content pillars, as I often refer to them internally. And really, this is where you're focusing your topics rather than keywords around specific needs of your audience, answering those direct FAQs that you're finding through search research, or asking specific sales teams, or going to your consumer relations teams and finding out what customers are querying about, looking in forums for the answers and trying to participate in those conversations, building that social presence that we talked about. And this last one I want to talk about is keyword-infused short and long-form videos, images, and audio. So when we talk about diversification of content, that can seem like a pretty big task at hand, but I want you to reimagine what that wheel looks like, right? So instead of starting with a blog and then creating a video or other supplementary content off of written article, think about how you could maybe make the most out of your initial investment. If you're starting with video, that has a lot more opportunity to deconstruct into these other areas of AI search and content format, right? So if you take a long form video that you start with, you can maybe dice and chop that into other short form videos across TikTok or Instagram. You can also take, the transcription of that or the audio, create a podcast or a long form Word article for that. You get a lot more bang for your buck. Now, again, caveat being, it's not always a one size fits all, and video is not always going to be the answer to every single content or topic that you're looking to create visibility around, but it is something to consider just to amplify your visibility and also answer some of that inspirational or visual aspects that we talked about earlier that AI search isn't always as good at creating, but does like to cite. And then lastly, again, those trust signals and reputation factors that we talked about. So positive public ratings and reviews are not something that SEO can directly influence, but tactically, it is something that we can look for gaps or opportunities to inform, again, articles or content that can help combat or improve experiences. So just a note on that, one thing to also consider when you're looking at those CEPs and what kind of content to create, you're not just creating content to create content and create visibility. You want to make sure it serves a purpose. It's tying back to whatever those pain points are. You're solving a solution. You're also maybe tying it back to, again, sales enablement or the specific pain points that alleviates and creates a loyal customer that comes to you to look for the answers rather than these other platforms. So multi-purpose content is really key here, and that's also how you can garner better sentiment around your customers and your audience. And then lastly here, again, just reiterating, public relations and influence are really key here. If you joined the webinar last week, you heard our colleagues here, Meg and Lindsay, talk about how influencer marketing is really driving search visibility as well. And that's absolutely true here. And again, it can also create some quick wins as we're working through 1 through 3 for SEO and AEO to build up that visibility within AI search, get those quick wins and the public perception changed in other third-party mentions, publications, and other platforms. All right, so the hot question, how do you measure LLM visibility? I know that's a bit of a loaded question that a lot of marketers seem to be asking, and you may not like my answer, but it is an honest one, and it's the real answer. And that is measurement is murky. So AI is new, and relatively speaking, it's been around for a couple of years, but metrics have not really evolved to really encapsulate how all of us can be measuring this universally. And that's, I think, a little bit of product by design. And it's continuing to evolve too. So even if we did have metrics in place right now to start understanding how we are measuring AI visibility, it's not necessarily going to be tying back to what I mentioned earlier, those core business outcomes that really move the needle for driving growth, for driving profit of a business. Really, AI search is more of that discovery engine. It's not necessarily driving your bottom line, which is what makes ROI difficult. And to throw a wrench into this whole complex problem of trying to measure AI visibility is personalized results. So whether I'm searching for something or Cody or Sarah here are searching for the same thing, we all may get different results. And not only that, localization within search results is real, as real as it is within AI search as well. So as I'm in Maryland right now and the team is in Harrisburg, they're going to get different results than what I'm necessarily getting, especially if I'm looking for local opportunities or depending what my prompt is. And if you're thinking that this is, creating an even more convolution and you're not really sure what to do about it, you're not alone in that. A recent study showed that a lot of marketers, 56%, are only using existing platforms to measure their AI visibility. 22% weren't measuring anything whatsoever. And 4 out of 5 of the marketers who are tracking some kind of data around their LLM visibility aren't trusting it. So we're all in the same boat here and we're all kind of trying to figure it out. But there is good news, and there is an area that you can start today as you start to also look into 2026 and looking to bring this kind of content and AI search program to life, how you can start to measure that visibility. But the key here, as I mentioned, is reminder, AI search is more so an indicator. It is not a bottom line KPI that you should be looking at as a value proposition to get buy-in from leadership or to get more budget secured. Really, you want to be looking at those individual pillars and focusing on the data that you can own and the systems that show that true attribution to what is actually moving the needle. So again, as we're talking about platforms that may be existing for you currently, I'm often talking to clients about just looking at their GA4 conversions and key events, understanding, again, what are the core events that we want to be driving our consumers, our audience to that is meaningful to the business. So whether that's product conversions, whether that's applications, requests for information, or again, in key events, that can also be things like if your goal is brand visibility, maybe it's again driving, shares and how people are signing up for your content or coming back or signing up into your ecosystem. These key events can be more indicators of how you're actually performing versus only showing how you're appearing in LLMs themselves. Another area that I've been advising clients on, and again, it is an indicator, is AI page view snippet tracking. So if you've ever been in Google search, Google AI overviews, for example, and you clicked on one of the sources, it jumps you over to a landing page, you see that highlighted text. Typically, that creates a parametered URL, and typically you can track that through JavaScript page view tracking. We've done this for a number of clients, and again, this is a good indicator to understand what content is actually driving visibility throughout the search landscape. So whether it's AI overviews, people also ask, which also has visibility with AI overviews now, or just other links throughout the ecosystem. This can help give you indicators of what content is performing well, what is maybe falling off the map, and also what your audience is engaging with most through these platforms. When we're talking about the topical keyword tracking, the SEO element, and all of this, again, I would hope that many of you here today are using some kind of form of SEO tracking tool, whether that's SEMrush, BrightEdge, Ahrefs, your tool of choice. But the key here is, again, tracking keywords that are pertinent to your topics, to your CEPs, to those pillars that I mentioned. Focusing on individual keyword performance isn't the best method. I think it's more of an antiquated methodology. While it does have relevance to understand, again, what is maybe the top driver and how you're appearing within search results, really topical coverage is key here to understand, making sure that you're fully covering the topics that pertain to your audience. And then also using those keywords, especially if you're running Google Ads, which again, Cody will talk about here a little bit in a minute, making sure that any of those appearances that trigger AI overviews, you're thinking about how your website's appearing alongside those AI overviews and how that's going to also inform maybe how you're structuring some of your paid keywords to combat that visibility, especially if it's containing keywords like top or best, some of those subjectivity queries that I mentioned earlier. And then lastly here, a couple of the metrics that we're using currently in our search programs to understand how we're performing within the landscape is not so much share of voice, which again is more so your breadth of keywords, which in today's landscape doesn't mean that much, especially if you're ranking 8 or 9 or 10 on page 1 of Google. What really does that mean to the end user? Is it actually driving click-through rate? But more so your share of search. So your share of search, whew, mouthful, is actually your brand's proportion of search queries out of all the brands in your category. So your percentage should hopefully increase as you're doing all of these things. And you want to see that continue to grow as you're putting out more content, as you're growing more of your brand resonance, and doing more of these AEO and GEO tactics that expand you within the market. And then lastly, I think the biggest thing that most SEOs and AI search professionals are talking about now is, again, LLM mentions and citations and how you're measuring that. Now, again, I mentioned there's a lot of murkiness to this, just again, based on the nuances of how you're appearing within them and depending on where others are searching and looking for these things, if you're doing a manual prompt tracking. But there are tool-based and scheduled prompt tracking tools that do this for you at scale and on a scheduled cadence. Even tools like SEMrush and BrightEdge have started to integrate new capabilities that can do this within their existing platform. Of course, many of these come with an added cost, but there are other additional tools that you can look at that we're also utilizing that help to understand, again, on a cadence, and you're using these category entry point pillars, these content pillars, these specific topics, and deconstructing them into prompts, putting them into these platforms and tracking how often your brand is being cited within them. These platforms like Peak AI, Profound, Rank Prompt, they all do this pretty well. Again, each come with their different price tags and pros and cons. It really depends on what you're looking to get out of this. I hope the one thing you take away with all of this as well is like it's not a one size fits all, and you shouldn't be doing every single one of these things. You really have to make sure it's tying back to what your end audience is looking for and really what you're trying to get from an end business outcome perspective. And then last note here that I just want to call out before we move into to kind of wrap up what this path forward looks like is if you're even struggling to understand if your content is being found by AI search, look at your server logs or talk to your development team who can maybe pull this for you. This is usually a good indicator to at least see if these bots are crawling your content or if they're being blocked. And from there, you can start to understand the cadence and maybe where there's some gaps of what you need to ramp up to make sure you're getting that visibility and then start working through these other tracking methods. All right, so I know I talk really fast, so I apologize. It's just who I am, but I do want to make sure we walk away with this with the clear playbook of what this looks like to activate and how we activate AEO, SEO, and GEO tactically together in a program. And how we do that is first, as I keep mentioning, really focusing in on those CEPs, those category entry points. Start with the research around your audience and what you're trying to get out and where your product, service, your brand fits into those conversations. And you can do that by, again, talking to your customer relations teams, talking to sales, conducting your own keyword research and audience research. But really, these are going to be your starting point to drive the needle forward and keep everything in a succinct path of where you're creating content, your swim lanes, your guardrails, that will then inform the rest of your strategy moving forward. Once you understand those, you can start researching and analyzing your current state of SEO and your media mix. So why this is important, as I said, SEO can be a pretty broad tactic or application when we're talking about what you're actually looking to get out of it. And I think it's critical there when you're working with an SEO partner is to understand that they have a good prioritization of what can be done now as quick wins, and then also setting the stage for where those gaps are in the long term. So while you're identifying the content gaps, not only in your own ecosystem, but maybe where your competitive set is also capitalizing on them, making sure you're also addressing those technical quick wins and areas that can position your website to appear with an AI search from a technical SEO perspective, as well as a content growth perspective, but then also pulling in paid media subject matter experts that can be looking at your media activation and your current media mix to understand, are you maybe not capitalizing on some of those influencer marketing or brand messaging opportunities opportunities that can amplify your voice within search. So again, as I mentioned, when you're addressing your technical SEO quick wins and you're identifying your growth gaps, making sure you're addressing the schema markup, your performance, your crawl index health, identifying component needs that can also be informed in website redesigns or website refreshes are also going to be key. These are where I often see and educate clients around, addressing what we can in the current state, but also looking for the growth opportunities as it pertains to content engineering. So programmatically scaling your SEO efforts. This won't all happen overnight, but you need to plan for that. So understanding where you're at now really starts with these SEO audits, these search strategies to understand the full landscape of what's working for you and what's not working for you, mapping your proper entities, understanding those EEAT factors that you need to fold throughout your content ecosystem, and also as you're distributing that content throughout your ecosystems. So once you do all of this, you understand your short-term wins, you're starting to understand the gaps in your competitive set as well as your own content. Here's where you start building out your strategy, your CEPs, and making the content that fills in this experience for your audience journeys in search. And again, here's where we really want to make sure that we're capitalizing on pulling in SMEs, your subject matter experts, to inform robust, value-driven content that reinforces those EEAT principles. So when I talk about value-driven content, I mentioned this earlier, it's not just creating content to win AI search visibility, but making sure that content also serves a purpose in that journey and also a business purpose in that. Is it also serving sales enablement? Is it also creating recurring value for existing or prospective customers who are looking for a solution to their current problem? This is how you get buy-in and better budgetary alignment to investing in these types of programs. Is not just promising, yes, we're going to get AI visibility, but also what is the outcome that that's going to solve. And the key here, again, is diversifying, as I mentioned, distributing it and amplifying it. And again, Cody will talk a little bit more here in a minute about how to amplify your messaging outside of just traditional search. So wrapping up here again, tracking your AI visibility is absolutely critical. Driving those paid reinforcement factors like, again, influencer, PR, even paid media really helps to drive and influence how your audience is searching for your product, your service, your brand in search. And then continuing to publish, monitor, iterate, and refresh it's critical. We established very early on that freshness and recency are key. So making sure you're staying on top of those pieces of content that you're putting out, making sure it's staying fresh. You're addressing new pain points that are coming up, new friction points, new FAQs. It's a constant reoccurring factor to make sure you're staying on top of your experience. All right, I know that was a lot. So I'm going to wrap it up here with Cody, who's going to talk a little bit more about how we're amplifying paid media messaging through integrating SEO and SEM efforts. So Cody, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Torin. Great stuff. So yeah, as you mentioned, let's transition into how an integrated approach between organic search and paid search can help elevate and extend your visibility within AI-driven search. So let's dive in. So Torin talked about search and the playbook for increasing visibility within AI search and LLMs. But how can you do that within paid search specifically? And we'll talk a little bit about Google and Bing with a direct application to Google for the most part. So there are two sets of ways to get your paid messaging within the AI overview summaries within the Google search engine results page. So the first set of avenues into that is going to be mobile device targeting. So as of right now, Google only supports through lines into AIOs through mobile device targeting. You cannot get there through desktop devices, and they will not show up if you are viewing the search engine results page through a tablet device either. So right now it is only mobile devices. The second way that you need to couple with mobile device targeting is with broad match keywords. So for those of you who are aware of those three match types, broad, phrase, and exact, each with their own varying levels of constraint to a search term. It's only the broad match keyword that allows you to inject your message there into the AI summaries. But uh, slight drawback with broad match keywords, they just do require a little bit more of an upkeep in terms of your negative keyword lists. So, in order to mitigate any kind of unqualified search terms from, gaining access to your budget, you do need to stand up a pretty thorough negative keyword list to kind of help offset the flexibility and the liberties that a broad match keyword can take. So that's one way to get your ad messaging into AI overviews. The second set is with two different campaign types. And those two campaign types would be Performance Max and AI Max for search. So Performance Max is a campaign type that is in essence an amalgamation of several channels like search is in there, YouTube, Gmail, display, maps, discover feed. There's a lot of different channels in there. So not only does it optimize towards the audience, but it will also optimize towards the platform. So it's think of it like a holistic ecosystem of an ad unit where things are kind of confined between one campaign type. And then AI Max for search. So this is the most recent campaign type that Google has debuted. It just rolled out back in April. This is formerly known as dynamic search ads that have been a campaign type for many, many years for Google. So they kind of repackaged it. They slapped the AI label on it, given today's modern search landscape, and they called it AI Max for search. So quickly, what this is it is a campaign type that allows Google to scan your site for the most relevant landing pages, and then it actually works to craft headlines and descriptions on your behalf to include as ad unit copy. So not only is it creating ad copy and messaging for your brand, but it's also directing them to the landing page that it feels is the most relevant to that user's search intent. So it does kind of take a little bit of a control away from you, which is why there are some downsides to these two specifically. So those downsides would be lack of transparency. So Performance Max, although it has gotten a lot better in the last 6 to 8 months, I will say that it's still relative to its siloed counterparts. It still does lack some transparency in terms of performance on where you're serving ads, what types of placements are producing conversions or producing, whatever KPI that, you have for that. Um, and great question that just came through about guardrails. That's a perfect segue. Thanks, Steph. And then there's also, they're more susceptible to fraud because they do allow the display camp or the display network into that equation. And the display network in our industry is known as sort of like the wild wild west. There's a lot of ad fraud there within that network specifically that you need to be aware of. And then, like I said, with AI Max for search, there's limited messaging control. You can opt out of some of those things, but by default, you are opted into that. So just make sure that you unchecked their ability to create what are called automatically created assets, like headlines, descriptions, and then final URL expansion, which again, they'll choose the landing page that they send your users to. So these are only to be used, and I literally am going to use the word guardrail, so that was such a good segue. There are guardrails that you can set up within these two campaign types so that Google does not light your money on fire like it really likes to do, unfortunately. So I'll go in on what those are in a little bit, but you might be wondering to yourself, like, which avenue do I take here? What set of avenues do I should I be taking to get my message into AIO or Copilot if you're talking about Bing, which Bing also has a Performance Max campaign type that allows you to get into their version of AIO. So I will say, without a doubt, your traditional responsive search ad campaign is going to be the safest. It's going to be the lightest lift for you also. Performance Max requires copy, images, and videos to really be effective. where AI Max, it's just copy. But when we talk about guardrails, you need a system integration like a enhanced conversion integration, which is Google's version of it. Meta has one called CAPI. It's the conversions API. But you need a systems integration, which transparently it can be a large lift to set that up. And it does require a sophisticated CRM system like a Salesforce to be able to set up that feedback loop so that you're not just optimizing towards a lead, but you're optimizing towards a user who submitted a lead and then went on to reach a lower funnel status like an application or a closed one or a high value purchase. So those are some of the guardrails that you can set up to provide Google with a very enriched North Star to work towards so that it can kind of stay on those rails. In addition to other, things like allow lists as well, you can use to keep those on the rails. So going back to that integration piece on the setup here that I talked about when we talked about integrating, your SCM and your SEO strategy, we really need to focus on user intent. I can't stress that enough. It's user intent by creating intent first search campaign structures, which is paramount in the way today's search landscape operates. So one way to do this is by setting up what's called a stag campaign structure. So a stag is an acronym, and of course, this is like the millionth acronym in our industry, where we love acronyms here in paid media. But a stag is a single theme ad group, not to be confused with a scag, which is a single keyword ad group. And a scag is a much more antiquated approach. This was somewhat of a media buyer hack like 10 to 15 years ago, where you set up one ad group with one keyword and you push all your budget into that keyword. So it's all eggs all in one basket kind of situation. Where a stag, you are looking at the themes of your search terms. And a stag structure will allow you to create synergy across search queries, ad groups, keywords, ad copy, and landing pages as well. So this might seem like table stakes. This might seem like a no-brainer. But I've seen a lot of instances where advertisers don't do this. And again, it's more important now than ever to ensure that your ad copy is speaking directly to the search query that matched to your keywords so that your ad doesn't get glanced over, within an AI answer that actually answers the user's query. So in this example here, how I have it set up, you can structure a stag similarly to this as an example. So here are three different ad groups set up by three different types of college programs. So let's say this is a higher education advertiser. If you are noticing a lot of search terms around individuals looking for the financial component of a biology degree, right? You would want to, and if that keyword was affordable biology degrees, you would not want to serve it a very generic ad that states, something like Maine State University providing a quality education for 100 years, apply now. Like that has absolutely no connective tissue with the actual intent of the user's query. You would want something that says pursue an affordable. So affordable kind of, takes care of that financial aspect, that financial inquisition from the user. And you would say something like pursue an affordable biology degree here at Maine State University. So you are addressing the intent of it. So you see how there is so much more connective tissue between the search intent and the ad copy. And then you can take it a step further and group in, flexibility. So if somebody's searching for flexible marketing degrees, it's a flexible marketing degree to fit your schedule. Apply now. And this has application again across multiple industries. If it's, accounting software and somebody's looking for the most the most, affordable or the best type of accounting software, you could address those same exact words in your ad copy to do this. And you can run what's called an n-gram analysis to group certain search terms together in 2 to 3 different search terms to get a really easy look at some of those themes, or you can, simply just eyeball it if you don't have a ton of search volume on the search query perspective. So to take a step further, I think Torin also mentioned some of the platforms that you could use. So you could use SEMrush to do an AIO analysis on what percentage of your search queries are triggering AIO summaries. So that'll give you kind of a leg up to structure a campaign, accordingly. And then I think also, again, diversifying your media mix in today's day and age to be more upstream is incredibly important in today's AI search landscape. And especially since paid search is losing real estate to AI summaries, you have to establish your voice earlier in the journey. So if you are a lower funnel niche advertiser, so that means you're utilizing paid search and or other conversion based channels, and you feel as though you've hit the ceiling with conversions or search impression share, also known as like a share of voice. Diversifying your media mix to include more upper funnel touch points will likely yield you incremental conversions seen through either organic or branded search terms. That's certainly been the case with our niche clients where we need to build awareness and consideration to help support lower funnel channels. And there have been quite a few instances this year where this has happened, where we've introduced a support tactic like a Google Demand Gen, which I'll get into in a second, that have instantly almost increased lower funnel conversion from our paid search campaigns and SEO attributed lead volume almost instantly when we introduce a support tactic like Google Demand Gen. So this is certainly one of those tactics where is our go-to when we look at the next tier of complement tactics. But if your business is promoting something a little bit more common with either more search volume or it's more of a commodity product, you may not get as much value, but it's still worth considering to expand your media mix. And some of those channels that we would recommend introducing as that next tier of support is platforms like Reddit. So Reddit, as you saw from Torin's slide, is cited upwards of 50% by LLM. So it is a trusted source of information for users across the board. I personally use Reddit for a variety of different things to get, a non-biased answer. And it's an opportunity to inject your message directly into those trusted subreddit communities. And Reddit won't drive efficient conversions compared to search or meta. It pales in comparison there, but it can be a valuable touch point to create. And I know we're running up against time here, so I'll quickly go over, again, demand gen I talked about. That is a support tactic that I can't recommend enough to introduce and to test. It includes YouTube Shorts and the YouTube type of inventory. So that is certainly a really prominently used platform in today's day and age. And also TikTok. TikTok has become a go-to search engine for younger users specifically, but also in conjunction with traditional searches through Google or Bing. So users are searching for information through that channel in addition to the entertainment aspect of it. And then lastly, you heard Tor mention, and again, our colleagues, Meg and Lindsay, I think last week, talk about influencer marketing. So again, kind of aching back to Reddit, getting trusted answers. Influencer marketing can be that valuable paid lever to pull and getting upstream with your messaging. So these are just a few of the channels that we would recommend, again, as that next tier of expansion with your media mix. And of course, it all depends on your initiative, your budget, and just your appetite for channel augmentation. So with that being said, that was a ton of information you got from both myself and Torin. And I'm sure you all have some questions that I hope we can still get to. So Sarah, I'll toss it back over to you to see if the audience has any questions so we can field.
All right, yes, so we're coming up at the top of the hour here, and what I wanted to do first is for those logged on, or if you're watching the recording, go ahead and scan the QR codes. So those first two, go ahead, connect with Torin and Cody, follow them on LinkedIn, see what they're sharing. If you want to continue our conversation about what you've heard today, or you're interested in learning how JPL can better partner with you on some of the things that we've talked about, or if you have questions after the fact, go ahead and scan that QR code on the far right. I'm your person. That form goes directly to me so that we can set up some time with you to have some additional conversations. And so with that, we'll go ahead and just take a peek. I do have one quick question that I know a client of ours provided in advance. So Torin, if AI search is eating into clicks and making ROI harder to prove, how do you make the case to leadership that we should invest here?
Yeah, and I think that's the question a lot of us are asking too. And I hit on it through a couple through points in this presentation around it's really hard to show ROI, so it makes that conversation really hard, but it's focusing more on those metrics that you can control. So when you're talking about investing in AI search, try to deconstruct it rather than focusing on we need to invest in AI search. Paint the position around the individual tactics that fold into what influences AI search. those individual tactics that you're activating have a lot better ROI opportunity if you're trying to report to a CFO or try to get the case for how you're going to demonstrate your investment into said thing. So again, if you're looking at influencer marketing, or if you're looking at PR, if you're looking at SEO, you're looking at paid media, all of these things have tangible outcomes and tactical conversion points that we can show demonstrated success with, where AI search might be a little bit more ambiguous and nebulous in terms of actually showing that value. So instead of approaching it from this broad, just, conversation of, yes, let's invest in AI search, all the things that we talked about today, take that back, fold it into your marketing mix, and get budget secured for those with the intention of maximizing your visibility in AI search as an outcome.
Excellent. Okay. And then I actually have a question of my own, and it's going to be for Cody, specifically from a business development perspective. If you had to pick the one thing that brands are getting wrong about paid media in an AI search world, what would you say that is?
Hmm. Good question. I would say the number one thing that they're getting wrong when it comes to paid search in an AI world is focusing on keywords and not intent. So AI search, AI in search in general isn't about matching keywords or terms. It's about matching intent and relevance with ad copy. And I think that if your median content, like I mentioned before, doesn't necessarily reflect how real people ask questions and make decisions, because Torin, correct me if I'm wrong. I heard you say this many times. It's not necessarily search and click anymore. It's ask and receive. Did I get that right? Okay.
Got it right. Yep. Now we had it.
Awesome. And awesome. And so you're gonna lose relevance and be invisible to your prospective customers if you don't focus on the intent. So managing and monitoring search term reports are more important now than ever.
No. Okay. Well, thank you. That was very helpful. And as I mentioned, if you have to hop off, go ahead and send that form to us. Oh, we do have a quick question coming in. We'll answer this very quickly. How do paid search tactics come up in AI search? So that might be a 2-for-1 special between Torin and Cody.
I can address the front end of that. So I think
Perfect.
when we're talking about AI search, we're mostly talking about Google AI overviews when we're talking about paid search tactics. I will say, as early as even today, I saw a publication, I think it was from Bloomberg, that
Mhm.
was talking about a deal between Microsoft and OpenAI. So how I read that article was that ads will likely be coming to ChatGPT, but we're not necessarily there yet. But we are seeing ads within AI overviews. And again, Cody hit on a little bit about this as we were talking about how you match your queries with that. So Cody, I'll let you kind of talk a little bit more about how to kind of, in a succinct way, talk about how you maximize the visibility within AI overviews and what you have to do to kind of capitalize on that.
Yeah, so outside of the more functional technical aspects of getting into AI search as it relates to like AI search within search engine results page, you want to be targeting, those mobile devices, the broad match keywords, or utilize a campaign type that is an avenue into AI overviews. But then also if you're referring to like LLMs, as Torin mentioned, Perplexity has ads now, I believe, within their platform. And for the last couple months, OpenAI has pretty much alluded to the fact that there will be paid placements within ChatGPT on their roadmap. And as Torin just mentioned earlier, as early as just this morning, an article got published that, again, you can kind of read between the lines on, that is certainly, going to be on the horizon for them. So a lot of these LLMs, whether it's AI and search, will always eventually have a paid through line into them.
It's all about bottom line revenue.
All about bottom line revenue.
Gentlemen, well, thank you so much. Thank you all for the extra few minutes. Our hope is that we were able to give you some clarity on what's actually happening in AI search, and more importantly, showing you what you can control, because that's what's important. And we want each of you to walk away feeling more empowered to make some real progress here. And so if you still have questions or want to dig deeper into a specific conversation, connect with us. We're ready to start some conversations. And, to wrap up, Torin, Cody, thank you both so much for joining me today. Thank you all for joining us in the audience, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks all.
Thanks all.